Councillor Perdue, and I've just spoken with Councillor Sims, and he apologises. He's running a little late, but he will be joining the meeting now.
Okay.
Right, we are live on YouTube now.
So I make it 7 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Welcome to this meeting of the Governance Scrutiny Group of Thursday, the 4th of February, 2021. Welcome councillors and officers, and of course a special welcome to our visitors. We have David Hughes of our external auditors, Mazars, and we're also joined by Greg Rubin and Gurpreet Dulay from our internal auditors of BDO. And so I'll introduce them at the appropriate time. So without further ado, let's start with the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, we've received some apologies from Councillor Howitt. Unfortunately, she's not feeling very well. Thank you.
Okay.
No substitute.
Item 2, declarations of interest. I take that silence as a no, and of course, if you feel that you should disclose an interest later on, by all means, bring it to my attention. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November 2020. Do I have your agreement of those minutes? Any objections? No, I take that as acceptance of those minutes. Thank you. So moving on to our first item of substance, annual audit letter, item 4, and who's going to introduce this to us, the report. I invite David Hoos of Mazars. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Councillor. You have with us tonight our annual audit letter. This is just the letter we're required to issue to effectively draw a line under the audit for 1920. As you'd expect, therefore, there's very little of new material in this. This is really just confirming a lot of those issues that we brought to your attention when we saw you at your last committee meeting. I think Peter's covering paper really draws out the key matters in this document. I think pleasingly, the things I would just draw to your attention, page 11 of your papers just gives green light, clean bills of health on all of those areas that we're required to report on. Page 15, committee members will recall when we saw you last time, we identified that it was likely that our audit opinion would make mention of a material uncertainty around asset valuations, both within your own portfolio and within the assets of the pension scheme. And our final audit report did make that material uncertainty clause. That's not a qualified audit opinion. It's effectively just drawing readers' attention to those circumstances that arose solely due to the pandemic. Page 17, Chair just notes our value for money conclusions, which again are clean bills of health. And finally, I would just note the points on fees on page 18, we discussed in detail at your last meeting. And those discussions are still going on to seek a resolution on those fee positions. In fact, Peter and I and colleagues have a meeting scheduled for next week just to resolve those and other matters around audit efficiency. And I'd probably just pause there, Chair, and take any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Yes, any questions? I don't think we have any. No, so if you want to carry on.
That's probably all I'd have to say, Chair. Really, I think that the paper is a formality. Really, as I say, there is nothing of new material in there, so that's all I wanted to draw out.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just moving back to the letter from the report. Councillors, it is recommended that the Government Scrutiny Group note the receipt of the annual audit letter. So there's no need for us to vote on this. Okay, all agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Chair.
So we'll move swiftly on to item number 5, the Internal Audit Progress Report. And who's going to read? Greg and Gurpreet.
Yes, it's going to be me, Chair Greg Rubins. Gurpreet actually couldn't join tonight, so it will just be me presenting our 2 papers.
Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. So the progress report, I'll talk to pages 27 and 28 of your pack. We are making progress in getting audits finalised. We have one more we're presenting to you today. It is obviously very challenging for ourselves and officers to do audit work in this environment and carry on working remotely, but we are getting through, and we're expecting to have another 4 reports to bring to you at your next meeting. So there is as I said, one report to go through, which is the one on licensing, which has come out as moderate on the design of controls and moderate on the effectiveness of controls. Within the report, which is obviously just very abbreviated in terms of findings, you won't see the good practice, but there was good practice we saw. We thought that there's a good centralised process that you have for managing licensing. In some authorities that's spread over different departments and there's no consistency. You do have a good centralised process, and you also have moved your data onto the uniform system successfully, so you have a system there that's working and that you're able to use. So that there was good practice. I think in terms of the points, they speak for themselves really, but I think as a theme, just a lack of documentation in some cases to justify the licensing application. In some cases, we found the website wasn't completely up to date in terms of having a complete list of all licensing applications. The reconciliations between the licensing system and the general ledger weren't happening on a regular basis. There was also issues around the scheme of delegation and who was approved to take forward licenses. So all of those points have been accepted by officers. We have actions in place for all of them, and have either been implemented already or will be implemented over the next 2 to 3 months. So, we've got a satisfactory response, but obviously very happy to take any comments or questions on that or anything else within the progress report.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Are there any comments or questions from councillors? Excellent. I'm taking that as there are no. Your report is clearly extremely comprehensive and has answered all our questions. I just want to confirm that councillors have had an opportunity to look at your report and indeed the other reports for most of the last week. So clearly they've delved into those pages, 140 of them in total, and have answered all our questions. So thank you very much, and good luck with the with the plan. So, councillors, the recommendation on the RBC report in paragraph 2, it is recommended that the Governance Scrutiny Group approve the Year 2 plans from the Internal Audit Strategy 2020-2023. Is there anybody?
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. Sorry about this, but I've presented the progress report. I haven't presented the plan yet, so I think that might be a different item.
Am I on the wrong page? My apologies.
You're taking agenda item 6 instead of 5.
My apologies. Yes, I'm using the, instead of paper copies, I'm using the screen. Sorry. That's the correct one. Sorry, yeah, paragraph 2. It is recommended that the Governance Scrutiny Group notes the progress report for 2020-21, Appendix A, prepared by the internal auditor. And I'm sure we all note that report. Thank you. So moving on to item 6 itself, internal audit strategy. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you again. And this is our detailed plan for the coming year, 2021-22. It's built upon the strategic plan that this committee had seen and approved previously, and also has been discussed with officers. There are some changes to the previous strategic plan. 2 audits have come out on risk management and community facilities, and 1 has come in on contract management, but that's just moving things between years. So the ones that have come out will go into the following year, and it's just a timing issue as to what's appropriate at the moment. But the plan, I think, gives a sort of reasonable coverage. We've got good coverage of your financial systems, as we always do, but we are looking at some other areas such as corporate governance, contract management, and the hybrid mail project. So I think there's a good reasonable coverage of the key risks the council's facing, but again, happy to take any comments or questions on the plan.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any comments or questions? I take that. Oh, Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Greg, for that update and overview. Just a very quick question, and something that I do raise regularly, but in terms of the audit plan going forwards and the risk area that we're going to look at, and I have noted in the papers today that we do have a financial component now in the risk register. In terms of the audit, what would be the approach be in terms of trying to map back any risks around financial impacts as part of that audit process? Because I've always been very keen in terms of the risk register and any identified risks to understand the impact and any mitigation strategy we come up with, to understand what the quantifiable impact is on our budgets or any financial sort of imperatives that we have. So I'd be interesting to hear from you in terms of that audit when it does happen. How would you treat the treatment of the benefits and the quantification of those benefits against the risk process?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. We do, all of our audits are linked to the risk register and to your risk profile. So there is a direct link there. If we do find issues that have got financial consequence, then we would bring that out as part of the reporting. We would try and quantify that wherever possible. And again, that can link back to your risk register. But obviously, we have regular discussions with the Section 151 officer and his deputy. And, if there are any financial issues such as that, they are, we are questioned on that, and it would be brought out as part of the reporting.
Councillor Verdi.
Thank you for that, Greg. And I will be I'll be looking at the risk register carefully as we move through the year in terms of that element. But thank you for that. Thanks for clarification.
Councillor Walker, did I see your hand? Sorry, I thought I caught it in the corner of my eye. Councillor John Stockwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I must have missed the explanations given previously, but can you explain what the hybrid mail project and the Meritech project are, please? Thank you.
Yes, I'm just finding the...
Sorry, Greg, would you like me to come in on that one?
Yes, please. That would be helpful.
No problem. Evening, everybody. Hybrid mail is a system whereby we don't send any of our own mail anymore out from the council. So we send electronic letters to a print house and they mail them out on our behalf. So this cuts the costs of our mailing service. I don't have the figures to hand, but I'm sure we'll be able to get them to you if you would like to know. The Meritech project is a piece of software that's residents can use to log into all of the information that we hold as a council about them. So they can pay their council tax bill and their green bin, and they can find out their bin date and all of these kind of things. So it's like a portal for accessing information that's relevant to them. Does that help, Councillor Stockwood?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I take that as a no. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. And thank you for a full report. So councillors, if I've got it right this time, on paragraph 2, recommendation is it is recommended that the governance scrutiny group approve the year 2 plans from the internal audit strategy 2020-2023. Sorry, just before I ask you to approve it, Mr. Linfield, was there anything you wished to add? Is Peter Linfield there?
Peter's been
I'm here,
having...
yeah, sorry, I'm just...
There we go.
Sorry, I should have
like everyone
asked
else.
earlier.
Yeah, so it's fine. We need to, obviously, it is at the moment, this is just a strategy, it is a plan. Things can change through the year as well. And obviously we're dealing with COVID at the moment, so no doubt as we go forward, there may be issues that arise, say, coming out of COVID, and hopefully with the vaccines and everything, we can see the light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel at the moment. So it's about, obviously, things aren't always set in stone.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, is there anybody abstaining or wish to object or not approve? No. So that being so, I take that as approval for the strategy. Thank you. We move on to the next item, item 7, capital and investment strategy. And I'm happy to ask Sarah Whitaker, a financial services manager, to present this report to us. Thank you. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, good evening. So the governance scrutiny group will have seen the report on the capital and investment strategy, which covers the next 5 years. Paragraph 4 refers to the capital strategy and its prudential indicators, which are detailed on paragraph 4 to 16 of the appendix. Paragraph 8 shows the projected spend and how it's funded, with the overall underlying need to borrow, which is also known as the capital financing requirement, or CFR. This is estimated to be 11.7 million. The impact of the CFR and the internal and external borrowing on the investment balances is shown at table 2 at paragraph 12. You'll see from this table that the investment balances dip in 21-22, and that's as a result of an increase in the CFR relating to Bingham Hub and the crematorium. And afterwards, the balance rises again to approximately 28 million by 25-26. The plans show an anticipated need to borrow in 21-22 of 5 million and a further 2.5 million in 22-23. And this is in order to support the cash flow. MRP, or minimum revenue provision, is detailed at paragraph 17 of the appendix, and it details the council's methodology for the cost of borrowing and capital expenditure that must be charged to the revenue account. VRP, or voluntary revenue provision, is referred to here, and we can reduce or remove this element of MRP in the event of a financial crisis such as COVID, as we're experiencing now. It was originally anticipated that we would need to utilise this reduction in VRP for the forthcoming budget, but due to additional government funding that's been announced recently, it's currently not deemed necessary. From paragraph 19 onwards, the appendix details the Treasury strategy, and the key points of this are the economic climate. So there's much turmoil at the moment as a result of Brexit trade agreements and impact of COVID. Growth is low as a result and not expected to recover in the short term. Interest rates have remained at 0.1 and are not expected to rise next year. Table 3 at paragraph 27 shows the anticipated interest receipts. Paragraph 30 on the appendix details a borrowing strategy. which sets limits for debts on paragraph 32, which is the maximum we can borrow, and the operational boundary at paragraph 33. Table 6 at paragraph 36 shows the proportion of financing cost to net revenue stream, which is the affordability, reflects the affordability of the council's plans. The proportion reduces from 24-25 as the net revenue stream increases in relation to the anticipated leisure strategy and crematorium income. Table 7 shows the projected investments ranging from 21 million in 21-22, increasing to approximately 28 million. Investments are lower in 21-22 as capital resources are utilised to fund the larger projects, which coincides with the external borrowing. It's replenished with the anticipated receipts from Sharp Hill, disposal of Abbey Road and Hollygate Lane. Treasury management limits are set for the purposes of minimising risk, and from paragraph 40 onwards, you'll see these limits. We set a credit rating shown at table 8. The limits are based on the values invested. Table 10 at paragraph 54 sets the limits on investments by group. So there's 2 separate limits that we have to adhere to. Counterparties are approved by our Treasury advisors, currently Link, and these are shown at Appendix 1. Tables 11 and 12 show the limits on interest rate exposure and maximum investment over 1 year. And this is currently set at 50% of the sum available for investment. The next section moves on to commercial investments from paragraph 66 to 80. Commercial investments are deemed to be those investments that are primarily for financial gain. Now, the PWLB recently undertook a consultation, and as a result of which it's no longer permitted to borrow from the PWLB if there are any plans in your capital programme for commercial investment. So as such, our budget proposals to be approved by council have removed the remaining balance of the asset investment strategy, and that will enable us to access the borrowing from PWLB. This section on commercial investments is therefore relevant to the existing investments. The table at paragraph 78 shows the assessment criteria. A key indicator of the council's reliance upon commercial income is the percentage of this against the council's total income. And this limit has been set at 30%. And from table 13 at paragraph 74, you can see that our projections are within those limits. Paragraph 75 covers the risk exposure indicators, and the charts depict how our investments are diversified across the sector, and this is done to minimise risk. The commercial investments as at the 31st of March 2019 and comparative to 2020 are shown at Appendix 2. The financial environment we're facing uncertainty, and this brings with it some risk. These are all covered in the body of the strategy. By setting and following prudential indicators and managing risk through setting investment limits, diversifying our investments, the council set a robust capital and investment strategy. Those of you that attended the Treasury training provided by Link will have noted the endorsement by our advisors of the council's proportionate approach to both our Treasury and commercial property investments. Paragraph 64 covers the importance of both member and officer training that will be provided again this year. And that's all from me. Any questions?
Computer's telling me off, saying I've muted. Councillor John Stockwood.
Thank you very much. I was watching the news today, and I think the Bank of England has told banks to prepare for the possibility of negative interest rates. So in the paragraph, I think it's 25, it talks about negative territory for interest rates. Can we just provide perhaps some information about how we are managing the risk of negative interest rates and what impact it might have on the council? With regards to our choices in 38, around paragraph 38, around how we will choose to invest. Is there any information you can share with us about how those choices have changed what we would normally invest in, and what is there any positive or negative financial impact on the choices being made because of paragraph 38's decision? So it's just information around those two aspects of risk and the consequences of the council's actions. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the negative interest rates, our Treasury advisors Link are not currently expecting that we will move into negative interest rate territory, although, like you correctly state, this is moving and can change. But at the point that this strategy was written, there was no expectation that would happen. So we've budgeted at expected interest rates at the point that we did the strategy.
Just to interject, if you look at table 3, Councillor Stockwood, there is some sensitivity analysis if the impact of potential minus changes on the interest rate. So we do sensitivity analysis. Clearly, we budget on what we expect, and things can change throughout the year, and obviously we report any changes through our regular reporting processes.
Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Stockwood?
The first part, I also asked around the consequences of 38, paragraph 38, the choices being made. Is it actually having any financial impact, positive or negative, on the council's investment strategy?
This is in reference to moving towards what we call greener investments. At the moment, it's still in its infancy stages, so there are very few risk-free or low-risk investments to make in totally green companies. What we do have at the moment is our current list of approved counterparties are all moving towards themselves and not investing in fossil fuels and those sort of things. So we do meet that criteria at the moment, but at the moment I wouldn't be able to assess whether that's having a financial impact, because we're not directly investing in green companies that are solely green.
Okay. Does that answer your question? For now, at least. Sorry, Councillor Verdi, did I see your hand move up?
Yes, it was half up actually, Chairman, because you hadn't finished talking, so I put it back down. But I have a couple of questions for Sarah and or Peter. The first relates to the capital financing requirements, table 2. Just a point of clarification, the usable reserves that are referred to, could you just clarify what the components of that figure is? I mean, clearly the CFR is, as you said, Sarah, on a downward trend, then it picks up again in 21-22. But in terms of the usable reserves, what is that made up of? And does it have any connection with the stabilisation reserve? That's the first question. The second one relates to table 70, page 75 rather, table 13. In terms of our commercial income, you're showing an upward trajectory, which is fantastic news, particularly in light of the current circumstances, our economic sort of concerns around COVID and businesses. So the question is, have we factored in, or are we expecting a loss of income as a result of our businesses in our properties? And then the second related to that point is the running costs. Could you just explain what the running costs are? Because I know they're obviously also going down with the overall effect of the net contribution to core functions obviously going up, which is good news, positive. But if you can just clarify some of those points for me. Thank you.
Okay, so the answer to the first question, the capital financing requirement and the makeup of the reserve These are balances that have been accumulated over a period of time and doesn't have any link to the Organisation Stabilisation Reserve. And with regard to your second question, of table 13, yes, we do factor in an element of voids into our rental income budgets, and the running costs are mostly staff time and other very small direct costs related to running those premises, because the other items are recharged directly to the tenants as a service charge.
Thank you, Sarah. I mean, I did notice it's gone down by about £100,000, obviously, from 2021 to 21-22, which is a considerable amount of money. So if that's what it refers to, that's excellent that we've managed to do that. But if it's primarily staff resources, how have we achieved that?
I would have to double check, but I think I'm right in saying that the year that you refer to, which is higher, does have included in it business rates that we're liable for when units are empty. And the year after, we expect that unit to be occupied, which is why the business rates have come out. So that's why you see that reduction.
That's fine. Thank you for those clarifications. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No. Thank you, Sarah, for that
Thank you.
full report. I'm just going to go back to the covering report. Ensure I've got the right one. Item 7. So, councillors, we're asked to, it is recommended that the Governance Scrutiny Group scrutinise and recommend for approval by full council A, the capital strategy and capital prudential indicators and limits for 2021-22 to 2025-26 contained within Appendix A, paragraphs 4 to 16. B, the minimum revenue provision, MRP statement contained within Appendix A, paragraphs 17 and 18, which sets out the Council's policy on MRP. C, the Treasury Management Strategy 2021-22 to 2025-26, and the Treasury indicators contained within Appendix A, paragraphs 19 to 65. And D, the commercial investments indicators and limits for 21-22 to 25-26, also contained within Appendix A, paragraphs 66 to 80. I'm happy to move that recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Verdi, thank you. Is there anybody against or wish to abstain for approving that recommendation? No, I take that as approval. Thank you very much, councillors. Okay. Moving on to item 8, risk management. Can I introduce Charlotte Cavan-Attack to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening again.
Risk Management Progress Report. I'll direct your attention firstly to page 97, start of the report. This is your regular risk management report. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, so I'm not planning on spending a great deal of time this evening going through it in detail. I would just like to bring your attention to paragraph 4.3 on page 98, where we have the risks that have been changed since the last report. So we have 3 risks where the likelihood or impact has been increased. All of these are directly related to COVID, and a full explanation is given in the appendix. Same paragraph lists 7 indicators where the likelihood or impact has been decreased. Some of these are due to changes in operational circumstances, and others are a result of officers being in a better position to manage the impact or risk posed by COVID-19. one risk has been removed from the risk register. It's been effectively separated into two risks. So this is paragraph 4.4 and 4.5. So you'll see that we did have one risk that was looking at the impact of both lockdown and recovery on the leisure sector. We've now separated that into two risks to allow us to manage the situation better. The standard risk register is presented at pages 101 to 107, contains information about each of the risks, as well as explanations where the risks have been changed. Additionally, I'd like to draw the group's attention to the information presented on pages 108 to 115. This is the additional information that was requested at the last meeting where we talked about risks. It specifically looks at the 11 risks that are classified as red risks within the risk register. It provides information both about the risk, its likelihood and impact, but also information that you won't have seen before about the mitigating factors and internal controls, as well as the financial impact of those risks. So this is information that we hold internally that you don't normally see, but we've presented here today to give you reassurance that those things are registered and used for monitoring and management purposes. So as always, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you have about the report this evening.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any comments or questions, councillors? No, I don't. Oh, there's one there. Councillor John Stockwood.
Thank you very much. In the earlier internal audit reports, it lists as there's going to be a review of retention and recruitment.
Yes.
And then at this report, we're talking about there's a growing risk relating to insufficient staff capacity. Do we, as a council, need to be concerned that we don't have a timescale for the audit and that there's a growing risk that's been identified in this report? Is there a particular issue building here that council should be concerned about? I think from those two elements that are coming through in the different reports across this evening.
I understand why you would make that connection, Councillor Stockwood, but I would like to reassure you that's simply not the case. The audit on the audit for recruitment and retention has taken place. I think it starts next week, but the terms of reference have now been agreed. So the reason that that was delayed was because we lost, of course, our head of strategic human resources, Julie Hicks, just before COVID broke at the beginning of last year. So we were doing an internal review of that service to make sure that we could do it. So the audit itself went on hold until that had happened. That's now been sorted and the audit is taking place. So no, there is no additional concern because of that reason.
Thank you. Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Chairman. And Charlotte, thank you very much for that summary. And I'm very pleased to note the, particularly on page 108 onwards, the financial impact now being included in the red risk. So my question relates to the first of those, the one relating to the carbon management scheme. So you've referred to the 30,000 opportunity cost or loss of interest because we're having to use £1 million from the stabilisation reserve, I think it is, if I remember. The question really is that a new cost that we hadn't budgeted for, the reason why we're having to transfer out of reserves, or is it because of obviously COVID is affecting our current budgets in terms of the diversions, but is it unplanned, or is it just that we are having to dip into the reserves because of the money being used elsewhere?
I think I'd ask Pete to jump in on that one just to make sure we get the right answer, actually.
Bear with me. Thank you, Councillor. No, well, as you would expect, we do plan for these things. So any potential loss in interest we will have planned for. Clearly, it's only when we actually spent the money, because effectively what we're saying is clearly when you're spending that £1 million, as opposed to having it in the bank, and there is a cost there. So that's really what it's focusing on. So, and obviously, as we go forward, we do project any loss in interest or gains in interest as we've shown in the trade management report.
Sorry, Peter, thank you for that. But I think the question was really aimed at, I understand that, there is a loss of the interest because it won't be earning that at the bank. But the question was more around the fact that we've had to use £1 million of the reserves to address this corporate priority. The question is that corporate priority and its costs, was it not accounted for in our budgets and we've had to use the reserves, or is it because it was allocated but we've had to?
It is budgeted for. No, we do, obviously we do budget for it.
Sorry, I think you were breaking up there, Peter.
Sorry, yeah, to clarify, we do budget for the use of that £1 million. So the lost interest will be budgeted for.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Verdi?
Yes, it does, but I might pick up outside of the meeting offline with Peter, just some further clarifications. But in terms of that answer, yes, that's fine. I'd just like to find out a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Any
other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any hands up, so thank you very much, Charlotte, for the report. The recommendation, councillors, it is recommended that Governance Scrutiny Group A, notes the contents of the report in relation to existing risks, B, considers the progress of the new risks identified in response to the global COVID-19 pandemic, and C, considers and makes recommendations on the information provided for the risks that have red alert status. I think we've had an opportunity to comment and note the report. Everyone agreed? And anyone wish to object? No. Thank you. That completes that item. Moving on to item 9, the work programme. Do you have any comments on this, Peter?
Well, a couple of things to say. Obviously, as we're coming to the end of our municipal year, it's quite a short work programme, so there's not actually a lot to look at. And obviously, as we get into the new year, after full council in May, there will be also the full programme for next year will be sorted. One other point, it is mentioned in the report, there is uncertainty regarding some timing of the summer governance group meetings, and that's linked to us understand what's happening with the statement of accounts. I noticed, David, you're still on the. I see you're still on the meeting. You're still there somewhere. Yeah.
Yep, still here, Peter.
Yeah, sorry, David. If you want to comment on this, basically, it's likely the statement of accounts will have to be signed off, we think, by the end of September. Though we're not quite sure when the draft statement of accounts has to go on the website and has to be complete. So are they going to be, we think, either the end of June or of July.
Yeah, I think there's still some uncertainty around that, isn't there? So.
Yeah. Basically, the timing of one of the meetings, because normally just before the draft statement is complete, we take the annual governance statement to the group, and that goes in the statement of accounts. So that's right why there's a bit of uncertainty. So hopefully by the time we get to May and we formalise the for next year, we'll know what the position is. Those the dates going forward will be finalised.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Oh, no, can't see any. Okay, it is recommended that the group agrees the work programme as set out below for the next one is in May. Of course, if there's anything you wish to raise after the meeting, of course, you're welcome to do that. Are we all agreed with that? Thank you. Councillors, that completes the agenda for this evening. So I'm happy to bring this meeting to a close at 19:44. Have a pleasant journey home. Good night.
Okay.
Right.